The alarm sounds echoed through the bridge of the USS Lightning Strike as red warning lights flashed across every control panel. Captain Jake Morrison gripped his command chair while his ship shook under heavy fire from the alien vessel that had appeared from nowhere. "Shields down to 30%, shouted Lieutenant Amy Carter from her engineering station. Her fingers moved quickly over the controls, trying to reroute power to the damaged systems. "I can't hold them much longer, Captain." The enemy ship was massive, at least 3 times the size of their destroyer. Its hull gleamed with a strange purple metal that seemed to absorb their laser fire. Strange symbols covered its surface, and weapon ports opened and closed like breathing holes on some giant space creature. "Return fire," Morrison ordered. "All weapons full spread." Commander Ryan Torres worked his tactical controls with practiced speed. Missiles away, direct hit on their forward section but no visible damage. Their armor is unlike anything in our database. The bridge crew worked with calm efficiency despite the desperate situation. These were veteran spacers who had served together for 3 years, patrolling the outer rim where human space met the unknown. They had encountered alien probes before, but nothing like this warship. "Sir, I'm picking up some kind of scanning beam," called Ensign Lisa Brooks from communications. "They're analyzing our ship's structure, our weapons, everything." Morrison felt a chill run down his spine. This wasn't a random encounter. The aliens had come here with a purpose, and that purpose seemed to be studying human technology. "Can you jam their scans?" "Negative, sir. The beam is on frequencies I've never seen before. It's like they're looking right through our hull." Another massive impact rocked the ship. This time the lights flickered and stayed dim. Emergency power kicked in, bathing everything in an eerie red glow. The smell of burned circuits filled the air. "Hull breach on Deck 4, Carter reported. "Emergency bulkheads are holding, but we've lost main power to the port side." Morrison made the hardest decision of his military career. His ship was dying around him, and his crew of 43 men and women were about to become prisoners or worse. But he still had one card to play. "Brooks, send out the distress beacon, full tactical package." "Sir, if I transmit our location, the enemy will know exactly where we are." "They already know where we are. Send it now." Lisa's hands hesitated for just a moment before she activated the beacon. The message would travel faster than light to the nearest human outpost, carrying not just their location but detailed scans of the enemy vessel and everything that had happened in this battle. The alien ship fired again, but this time the beams were different. Instead of the destructive energy that had been tearing his ship apart, these new weapons seemed designed to disable rather than destroy. The Lightning Strike's engines went dead, leaving them drifting in space. "They're not trying to kill us anymore," Torres observed. "They want us alive." Through the main view screen, they watched as the alien vessel moved closer. Strange mechanical arms extended from its hull, reaching out to grab their disabled ship. The arms were covered in the same purple metal, and they moved with unsettling, organic grace. "Captain, we could trigger the self-destruct," Carter suggested quietly. "Deny them our technology." Morrison considered it. Standard procedure called for destroying the ship rather than letting it fall into enemy hands. But something made him hesitate. These aliens had gone to great trouble to capture rather than destroy them. That suggested they wanted to study humans as much as human technology. Negative. If they wanted us dead, we'd be dead already. They're curious about us, which means we might learn something about them too. The alien arms clamped onto their hull with surprising gentleness. Through the metal, they could hear strange sounds, not quite mechanical, not quite organic. It was as if the alien ship was alive in some way that human ships were not. "Sir, they're cutting through the airlock," Carter reported. "Some kind of energy beam, but it's not damaging the surrounding hull. Very precise work." Morrison stood up and straightened his uniform. Around him, his bridge crew did the same. They were about to become the first humans to meet this alien species face to face, and he wanted them to remember that they represented all of humanity. "Everyone stay calm," he ordered. "Follow my lead and remember your training. We're explorers and soldiers, but we're also diplomats now." The cutting stopped. Through the hull, they could hear new sounds, footsteps, but not quite like human. Footsteps. There were too many of them, and they had an odd rhythm, as if the creatures making them had more than 2 legs. "Captain," Brooks called out softly. The beacon transmission was successful. Command received the full package. Morrison nodded. Whatever happened next, humanity would know about this encounter. The aliens might capture his ship and crew, but they wouldn't do it in secret. Somewhere in human space, military planners were already analyzing the data his ship had gathered. The airlock hissed open and the first alien stepped onto the bridge of a human warship. It was tall and thin, with 4 arms and skin that shifted color like oil on water. Its eyes were large and dark, and they seemed to take in every detail of the human technology around it. Behind the first alien came others, all carrying devices that hummed with unknown energy. They moved through the bridge like scientists studying specimens, their large eyes recording everything they saw. The lead alien approached Morrison and made a sound that might have been speech. When Morrison didn't respond, it touched a device on its chest. Suddenly its words became clear. "I am Commander Veltar of the Zephyrian Empire. You and your vessel are now subjects of scientific study. You will not be harmed if you cooperate." Morrison looked into those alien eyes and saw intelligence, curiosity, and something else. A kind of confidence that came from being part of a civilization that had done this many times before. These aliens were experienced conquerors, and they thought they understood what they had captured. "I am Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earth Space Force. We come in peace, but we will defend ourselves." The alien's skin shifted to a darker color, which Morrison guessed might be amusement. "Defense is no longer possible, Captain Morrison. Your species is about to be understood." As alien soldiers herded his crew toward the airlocks, Morrison wondered if the Zephyrians really knew what they were getting themselves into. Humans had a long history of being underestimated, and it rarely ended well for those doing the underestimating. The Zephyrian research station hung in space like a giant metal flower, its many arms reaching out toward the captured human ship. Commander Veltar watched through the observation deck as his teams began their work on the USS Lightning Strike. This was the moment he had been waiting for his entire career. "Begin full analysis," he ordered into his communication device. "I want to know everything about this vessel and its crew within 7 cycles." Dr. Zix Andra floated near the human ship in her specialized analysis suit. Her 4 arms moved independently as she used different scanning tools on the hull. The metal was simple iron and steel alloys, much cruder than the living metals the Zephyrians used for their ships. "Primitive construction," she reported to the research team. "But surprisingly thick armor plating. They seem to expect their ships to take heavy damage." Inside the station, Science Director Cathvar studied the first reports with growing confusion. Every spacefaring species they had encountered used similar technologies. Advanced computer systems controlled everything from life support to weapons. Ships were built light and fast, relying on shields and speed for protection. But this human vessel was different. "The computer systems are oddly limited," reported tech analyst Morden from inside the human ship. "They have manual controls for almost everything. Look at this, they can fly the entire ship using only mechanical systems if their computers fail." Cathvar examined the data with his large eyes. "Why would they build such redundancy? It adds weight and complexity." "Perhaps they do not trust their own technology," suggested Veltar. "Or perhaps they expect it to fail under stress." Lieutenant Amy Carter sat in her cell and listened to the aliens talking in their strange musical language. The translation device they had given her only worked sometimes, but she could tell they were frustrated by something. Through the small window in her cell door, she could see them examining pieces of equipment from her engine room. 3 Zephyrian scientists stood around a human backup power generator, their skin colors shifting through various shades of confusion. They had taken it apart completely, but the simple mechanical design seemed to puzzle them more than any advanced technology would have. "It uses controlled explosions to generate power," one of them said in amazement. "No energy crystals, no fusion cores, just burning fuel and moving metal parts." "Barbaric," replied another. "But effective. This could power their ship even if all advanced systems failed." Amy smiled to herself. The aliens were learning about human engineering, but they were missing the point. Humans built things to work under the worst possible conditions because they had learned through centuries of warfare that the worst conditions always happened eventually. Dr. Zixandra had moved inside the ship and was examining the weapons systems. What she found there disturbed her more than the primitive computers. The humans had energy weapons similar to what other species used, but they also had something else entirely. Director Kethvar, you need to see this, she called through her communicator. The science director arrived to find her standing before a large metal tube that ran through several decks of the ship. It fires solid projectiles using chemical explosives, she explained. Metal slugs accelerated to incredible speeds. It is like something from the ancient histories of our own world. Kethavar studied the weapon with fascination and horror. But why? Energy weapons are more efficient, more accurate, more controllable. I have been analyzing their tactical database, Zixandra replied. These kinetic weapons are designed to penetrate energy shields. Most shield systems are calibrated to stop energy attacks. A simple piece of metal moving fast enough can pass right through. The implications sent ripples of color across Kethvar's skin. Every ship in the Zephyrian fleet relied on energy shields for protection. These humans had developed weapons specifically, designed to make such defenses useless. In another part of the station, healer Nixthera was conducting her examination of the human crew. She had studied dozens of alien species over her long career, and she thought she understood biological diversity. But the humans were unlike anything in her experience. Captain Jake Morrison sat calmly in the examination chair while alien sensors mapped every part of his body. Most captured beings showed clear signs of stress, elevated heart rates, chemical changes in their blood, behavioral modifications. Morrison's body was certainly responding to stress, but not in the way she expected. Your physiology is adapting to the situation, she told him through the translator. Your body is becoming more efficient, more alert, stronger. This is unusual. Morrison looked at her with steady eyes. Humans adapt quickly to new situations. It is how we survived long enough to build spaceships. But most species become less capable under stress, not more. Their thinking becomes confused, their reactions slower. Then most species never lived on Earth, Morrison replied. On our world, stress meant danger, and danger meant you had to be at your best or you died. Nixithara made careful notes. She had examined warriors from many species, but their bodies always showed the damage that combat training caused. These humans seemed to thrive on the very stress that would break other beings. Commander Ryan Torres was being questioned in another room. The Zephyrian interrogator, a specialist named Kixhai, was trying to understand human military thinking. What he learned made him increasingly uncomfortable. You study the weaknesses of species you have never met, Kixhai observed, looking through Torres's personal files. Why do you prepare for wars that may never happen? Torres leaned back in his chair. Because wars always happen eventually. The species that survive are the ones that are ready when they do. But surely peaceful contact is possible. Trade, cultural exchange, mutual benefit. Maybe, Torres agreed. But if you want peace, you prepare for war. If you want to survive first contact with a hostile species, you better know how to fight them before you meet them. Kixhai studied the human tactical manuals with growing unease. They contained detailed analyses of theoretical alien combat capabilities, weapon systems that might be used against humans, and strategies for fighting enemies with various technological advantages. The humans had spent decades preparing for space warfare before they ever left their own solar system. Science Director Kethvar reviewed the reports from all his teams and felt a strange emotion he had rarely experienced in his long career. Uncertainty. Every species they had studied before had been comprehensible, their technology and culture fitting into known patterns. But these humans seemed to approach everything differently. They built crude but reliable technology. They trained every crew member for combat. They prepared for failure and disaster as if such things were inevitable. Most disturbing of all, they seemed to become more dangerous when threatened rather than less. Veltar joined him in the observation chamber as they watched human prisoners being moved between examination rooms. The humans walked with straight backs and alert eyes, showing no signs of the despair or submission he had seen in other captured species. "They do not act like prisoners," Veltar observed. "No," Kethvar agreed. "They act like soldiers who happen to be temporarily detained." Neither alien scientist realized that their observation was more accurate than they knew. Captain Morrison had briefed his crew before their capture. They were not just prisoners. They were intelligence gatherers, collecting information about their captors while pretending to cooperate. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, Admiral Kate Sullivan was studying the data from Morrison's beacon and preparing a response that would teach the Zephyrian Empire exactly what they had gotten themselves into. Science Director Kethvar stood before the central analysis screen, watching data flow in from dozens of research teams. 3 days had passed since they captured the human vessel, and every new discovery made him more uncomfortable. The patterns emerging from their study painted a picture of a species unlike any they had encountered before. Dr. Zixandra approached with her latest report, her skin showing the deep purple color that indicated serious concern. "Director, I have finished analyzing their tactical database. What I found changes everything we thought we knew about these humans." She activated the display, showing star maps marked with detailed notations. "These are not exploration charts, they are invasion plans. The humans have identified the home worlds of 17 different species, including ours, and created detailed attack strategies for each one." Kethvar studied the information with growing alarm. The human data included precise locations of major cities, industrial centers, and military installations on worlds they had never visited. How could they know such details about our planets? Long-range observation, signal interception analysis of space traffic patterns, Zixandra explained. They have been watching us for years without our knowledge. Every species they have detected has been cataloged as either a potential ally or a potential threat. The implications sent waves of color across Kethvar's skin. And which category did they place us in? Zixandra's silence was answer enough. In the interrogation chambers, Commander Ryan Torres sat across from Kixhai, the Zephyrian specialist who was trying to understand human psychology. The questioning had been going on for hours, but Torres showed no signs of fatigue or stress. If anything, he seemed to be enjoying the conversation. "Your species fascinates me," Kixhai admitted. "Most beings become cooperative when separated from their group and placed in unfamiliar surroundings. You seem completely unaffected." Torres smiled. "Humans train for isolation and capture from the time we join the military. We expect to be alone sometimes, cut off from support, operating behind enemy lines. It does not frighten us. But surely the uncertainty of your situation must cause anxiety. You do not know what will happen to you or your crew." "I know exactly what will happen," Torres replied confidently. "My people will come for us. The only question is how long it will take and how many of your ships they will destroy doing it." Kixhai studied the human's vital signs. Torres was not bluffing or trying to appear brave. He genuinely believed what he was saying with a certainty that disturbed the alien interrogator. "Your confidence seems misplaced. You are one small ship against the entire Zephyrian Empire. You think in terms of numbers and technology," Torres explained. "Humans think in terms of will and determination. We have been fighting wars for thousands of years against enemies with better weapons, superior numbers, and technological advantages. We usually win anyway." Meanwhile, healer Nyx Thara was making discoveries about human biology that challenged everything she thought she knew about intelligent life. She had been studying blood samples from the crew, looking for weaknesses that might be exploited if the humans proved hostile. What she found instead was a physiology designed for conflict. Their bodies produce combat chemicals naturally, she reported to Veltar. Under stress, they become faster, stronger, more focused. Their pain tolerance increases, their healing accelerates, their senses sharpen. It is as if their entire biology is optimized for warfare. Veltar examined the data with fascination. All species have fight or flight responses. What makes humans different? Other species choose flight when possible. Humans seem to prefer fight, even when flight would be safer. And their definition, a victory, is troubling. She brought up comparative studies of warfare among different species. Most civilized races fought until one side gained a clear advantage, then negotiated a settlement. Conflicts were generally limited in scope and duration. Humans fight until the enemy is completely destroyed, Nixthera continued. They do not seek advantage or dominance. They seek the total elimination of threats. Their history is filled with wars that ended only when one side could no longer fight at all. The medical data painted a picture of a species that had evolved not just to survive conflict, but to excel at it. Human bones were denser than most species, their muscles more efficient, their cardiovascular systems capable of sustaining extreme exertion for extended periods. Lieutenant Amy Carter was providing her own insights to the aliens studying human technology. The engineering teams had been puzzled by what they saw as wasteful design choices, and they had finally asked her directly for explanations. "Why do you build ships with so many separate systems?" asked tech analyst Morden. "It would be more efficient to integrate everything." Amy looked at the alien engineer with amusement. "Because when someone shoots at you, integrated systems fail all at once. Separate systems fail one at a time, which means some of them keep working. But the maintenance requirements, the additional complexity, are worth it when they keep you alive," Amy finished. "You build ships expecting them to work perfectly. We build ships expecting them to be damaged, lose power, catch fire, and still need to fight." The concept seemed to disturb Morden deeply. His species had advanced beyond such crude thinking millennia ago. Their ships were marvels of integrated technology, where every system worked in perfect harmony with every other system. "What happens when your perfect harmony gets disrupted?" Amy asked. "When someone punches a hole in your hull or overloads your power grid? Do you have backups for your backups?" The alien engineer's skin color shifted to indicate deep thought. Their ships were indeed vulnerable to cascading system failures. If key integrated systems were damaged, entire vessels could become helpless. Science Director Kethvar was reviewing cultural data that painted an even more disturbing picture of humanity. Unlike every other spacefaring species, humans had never achieved true planetary unity. Even as they expanded into space, they remained divided into competing nations, factions, and belief systems. "They fight each other constantly," reported cultural analyst Pixtera. "Even now, as they explore the galaxy together, their political systems remain in competition. They have never known true peace, even among their own kind. How can they function as a spacefaring civilization while fighting among themselves?" Kethvar wondered. "That is what makes them so dangerous," Pixtera replied. "They have learned to coordinate against external threats while maintaining internal competition. When they face a common enemy, they unite instantly and completely." The analyst brought up historical records from the human database. Every time their species was threatened by external forces, they stopped fighting each other and focused all their energy on the outside threat. Once that threat was eliminated, they returned to their internal conflicts. Veltar joined the discussion, his own research adding to the disturbing picture. "I have been studying their crew interactions. These humans have only served together for 3 years, yet they function with a coordination that would take most species decades to develop." "How is that possible?" asked Kethvar. "They train constantly for cooperation under stress. Their military doctrine assumes that small groups will be cut off from support and forced to operate independently. Every individual is trained to fill multiple roles and to work seamlessly with unfamiliar teammates." The Zephyrian research team was beginning to realize that they had not captured a typical spacefaring vessel. The USS Lightning Strike was not just a ship with a crew. It was a perfectly coordinated war machine operated by beings who had spent their entire evolutionary history learning to fight more effectively. Commander Veltar gathered all the research team leaders for a summary meeting. As the various specialists shared their findings, a pattern emerged that filled the assembled scientists with a growing sense of dread. "They are not explorers who happen to arm themselves," he concluded. "They are warriors who happen to be exploring. Everything about their technology, their biology, their culture, and their psychology is focused on one primary goal: winning conflicts." Dr. Zixandra added the final disturbing detail. And according to their tactical database, they consider our capture of their ship to be an act of war. The research station suddenly felt much less secure to its alien occupants. Somewhere in the darkness of space, the human response was already being prepared, and none of the Zephyrian scientists were confident they would like what was coming. Healer Nixithera stared at the medical readings in complete disbelief. She had run the tests 3 times, certain that her equipment was malfunctioning, but the results were always the same, and they challenged everything she understood about intelligent life in the galaxy. Director Kethavar, you must see this immediately, she called through her communicator, her voice tight with concern. When the science director arrived at the medical bay, he found Nixithera standing before a display, showing stress response data from the human prisoners. The readings made no sense according to established biological science. Watch what happens when we increase environmental pressure, she said, adjusting the controls. The display showed heart rates, brain activity, and chemical production levels for all 43 human crew members. As simulated stress levels rose, something impossible happened. Instead of declining performance, the humans became more capable. Their reaction times improved, their cognitive function increased, and their physical strength grew measurably stronger. This cannot be correct, Kethavar said, studying the data. All known species show decreased capability under extreme stress. It is a universal biological constant. Not for humans, Nixithera replied grimly. I tested this theory by creating actual stress situations. When we separated crew members from each other, they became more focused. When we created time pressure, they worked faster and more efficiently. When we presented them with impossible problems, they found creative solutions. She brought up comparative data from other species. Zephyrians, like most intelligent beings, showed a predictable decline in all capabilities when stress levels exceeded normal parameters. It was an evolutionary safety mechanism that prevented individuals from taking dangerous risks. Humans appear to have evolved the opposite response, Nixithara continued. Extreme stress activates what they call combat mode. Their bodies flood with chemicals that enhance every aspect of their performance. They become living weapons when threatened. The implications terrified both scientists. Every military doctrine in the galaxy was based on the principle that increasing pressure on an enemy would eventually break their will to fight. But humans seemed to grow more dangerous the more desperate their situation became. Dr. Zixandra had made her own disturbing discovery while analyzing human military records. She called an emergency meeting of all senior research staff to share what she had learned about human warfare concepts. I have been studying their historical conflicts, she announced to the assembled group. What I found redefines our understanding of what these beings consider acceptable combat behavior. She activated a display showing data from human wars throughout their history. Other species fight for territory, resources, or political advantage. When the cost becomes too high, they negotiate a settlement. Humans fight for a different reason entirely. The data showed conflict after conflict, where humans had continued fighting long past the point where any reasonable species would have sought peace. They fought until their enemies were completely unable to threaten them again. They do not seek victory, Zixandra explained. They seek the total elimination of threats. When humans decide that another group is dangerous, they do not stop until that group no longer has the capability to harm anyone. Commander Veltar studied the historical records with growing horror. These are not military conflicts. These are extermination campaigns. Exactly, Zixandra confirmed. And according to their tactical assessments, they have classified the Zephyrian Empire as a Category Alpha threat. The room fell silent as the researchers absorbed this information. Category Alpha was the highest threat classification in the human system, reserved for enemies that posed an existential danger to human survival. Tech analyst Morden had been studying the human ship's design specifications and had discovered something that made him question everything he thought he knew about spacecraft construction. The USS Lightning Strike is not a frontline warship, he announced to the group. According to their classification system, it is a light reconnaissance vessel. The alien engineers looked at each other in confusion. The human ship mounted weapons that could destroy most vessels in the Zephyrian fleet. Its armor was thick enough to withstand direct hits from their most powerful energy cannons. Its redundant systems made it nearly impossible to disable completely. If this is what they consider a light scout, Morden continued, what must their actual warships be capable of? The question hung in the air like a poisonous cloud. The Zephyrians had assumed they were studying an example of human military might. Instead, they had captured what humans considered barely adequate for reconnaissance work. Cultural analyst Pixitera added another disturbing piece to the puzzle. I have been analyzing their crew training records. Every human aboard this vessel, from the captain to the maintenance staff, has received combat training equivalent to what we would give our elite military specialists. She displayed training records showing that human cooks could fight, human medical staff could operate weapon systems, and human engineers could conduct military operations. The concept of non-combatant crew members simply did not exist in human space travel. They do not have soldiers and civilians, Pixitera explained. They have warriors and warriors who happen to have other jobs as well. The research team was beginning to understand that they had not captured a military vessel with a mixed crew. They had captured a warship operated entirely by trained killers who could function in any role necessary for survival. Ensign Lisa Brooks had been quietly observing her alien captors while pretending to cooperate with their communications research. What she saw confirmed her worst fears about the Zephyrian Empire's understanding of humanity. The aliens were treating this as a scientific study, cataloging human capabilities like they were examining an interesting but harmless species. They had no idea that every human aboard their station was gathering intelligence on Zephyrian technology, security procedures, and military capabilities. When interrogator Kixhai asked her about human communication protocols, she provided helpful, technical information while carefully noting the aliens' own communication systems. When cultural analyst Pixitera inquired about human social structures, Lisa answered honestly while observing Zephyrian organizational weaknesses. The aliens thought they were studying humans. Lisa knew that the humans were studying them right. Beck Science Director Kethavar called a final meeting to summarize their findings. As each research team presented their conclusions, a terrifying picture emerged of what they had brought into their most secure facility. We sought to understand a new spacefaring species, he said grimly. What we discovered is that we have encountered the galaxy's apex predators. Dr. Zixandra presented the military analysis. They have identified our homeworlds, our trade routes, our defensive capabilities, and our technological weaknesses. They have developed specific strategies to exploit every vulnerability we possess. Healer Nixthara shared the biological data. They are physically and mentally optimized for warfare. Stress makes them more capable, not less. Desperation transforms them into something approaching a living weapon. Tech analyst Morden reported on their technology. Everything they build is designed to function under the worst possible conditions. Their weakest ship could cripple most of our fleet. Cultural analyst Pixitera delivered the final blow. They have never known peace, even among their own kind. They are a species that has spent its entire existence perfecting the art of destroying enemies. Commander Veltar synthesized all the information into one terrifying conclusion. We believed we had captured specimens for study. Instead, we have brought apex predators into our home and given them detailed access to everything we use to defend ourselves. As if summoned by his words, alarms began sounding throughout the research station. The long-range sensors had detected something approaching from the direction of human space. Multiple contacts, reported the station's sensor operator. Large vessels moving at high speed directly toward our position. Kethvar felt his skin color shift to the pale shade that indicated mortal terror. How many ships? 15. No. 20. The count keeps rising. Sir, it appears to be an entire human battle fleet. In her cell, Captain Jake Morrison smiled as the familiar sound of human engines reached his ears through the station's hull. The rescue fleet had arrived, and Admiral Kate Sullivan was about to give the Zephyrian Empire their first real lesson in human military doctrine. The aliens had spent days trying to understand what made humans dangerous. They were about to receive a very practical demonstration. The main display in the Zephyrian research station showed 27 human warships approaching in perfect formation. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood on the bridge of her flagship, the USS Thunderbolt, watching the alien station grow larger on her screens. "Target analysis complete, Admiral," reported her tactical officer. "The station has moderate defensive capabilities, but nothing that can stop our fleet." Sullivan nodded, but her expression remained cold. "This is not about destroying their station, Commander. This is about sending a message to every alien species within 100 light-years." On the research station, Science Director Kethvar watched the approaching fleet with growing panic. The human ships were massive, heavily armed, and moving, with a coordination that spoke of years of training together. Each vessel was at least twice the size of the captured Lightning Strike, and they bristled with weapon systems that made Zephyrian technology look primitive. "Open communications," he ordered desperately. "Perhaps we can negotiate." The main screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of the human flagship. Admiral Sullivan appeared, her uniform crisp and her eyes hard as frozen metal. Behind her, human officers worked at their stations with the same calm efficiency that had impressed the alien researchers when they studied the Lightning Strike crew. "I am Admiral Kate Sullivan of the United Earth Space Force," she announced. "You are holding 43 human citizens prisoner. You have 1 hour to release them and prepare to face the consequences of your actions." Kethavar stepped forward, his skin showing the pale colors of submission. "Admiral, this was a scientific mission. We meant no harm to your people. We were simply trying to understand your species." Sullivan's expression did not change. "Understanding works both ways. Director, while you were studying my people, they were studying you. We now know everything we need to know about Zephyrian technology, defensive capabilities, and strategic weaknesses." The alien scientist felt a chill run through his body. Captain Morrison and his crew had not been passive subjects of study. They had been active intelligence gatherers collecting information about their captors while pretending to cooperate. "We can return your people immediately," Kethvar offered. "There is no need for violence." "Violence was decided when you fired on a human vessel," Sullivan replied. "What happens next depends on how quickly you learn from your mistakes." The human fleet moved closer, and the research station's sensors revealed the true scale of what they faced. Each human warship carried enough firepower to level a planetary surface. Their armor was thicker than anything in the Zephyrian military, and their weapons included the same kinetic systems that had puzzled the alien researchers. Commander Veltar watched from the observation deck as the lead human ships began deploying. Smaller vessels. These were not shuttles or transport craft but fast attack ships that swarmed around the station like predators circling wounded prey. "They are not here to negotiate," he realized with growing horror. "They are demonstrating their capability to destroy us completely." Dr. Zixandra was frantically reviewing her analysis of human military doctrine, trying to find some precedent for what was happening. What she found offered no comfort. Throughout human history, when their people were captured and studied by enemies, the response was always the same: overwhelming retaliation designed to ensure it never happened again. "They are going to make an example of us," she reported to the research team. "Not just to rescue their crew, but to show every other species what happens when humans are threatened." Admiral Sullivan's voice came over the communication system. Again. "Director Kethvar, your research into human capabilities has been noted. We trust you found the experience educational. You now have 45 minutes to release our people." The human fleet continued its methodical approach, but something else was happening that filled the alien researchers with dread. Long range. Sensors detected more human ships arriving from different directions. This was not just a rescue mission. It was a coordinated military operation involving multiple fleets. "How many ships are coming?" asked Commander Veltar. The sensor operator's skin had turned completely white with fear. "At least 60 confirmed contacts, with more appearing every few minutes. Sir, I think they are surrounding this entire star system." Captain Jake Morrison sat in his cell, listening to the familiar sounds of human military operations echoing through the station's hull. His crew had performed perfectly, gathering intelligence while maintaining their cover as cooperative prisoners. Now it was time for the final phase of the operation. The cell door opened and Kethvar entered with a squad of guards. The alien scientist looked haggard, his skin color shifting rapidly through various shades of distress. "Captain Morrison, your admiral is demanding your immediate release. We are prepared to comply." Morrison stood up slowly, straightening his uniform. "That is very wise of you, Director. But I am afraid the situation has moved beyond simple prisoner exchange." "What do you mean?" Morrison smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "You wanted to study humans to understand what makes us dangerous. Consider this a practical demonstration. My people do not just rescue their own, they ensure that threats are permanently neutralized." The alien scientist felt his legs weaken. "But we will release you. We will leave human space immediately. This does not need to escalate." "You fired on a human vessel," Morrison replied. "You captured human citizens for experimentation. You gathered intelligence on human technology and capabilities. In our military doctrine, these are acts of war." Through the station's communication system, Admiral Sullivan's voice announced the final phase of the operation. "All Zephyrian personnel have 10 minutes to evacuate the research station. Any vessel that does not depart immediately will be considered hostile." The evacuation began in panic. Alien researchers abandoned their work, leaving behind years of scientific data and expensive equipment. The careful, methodical study of human capabilities was forgotten in the desperate rush to escape what they now realized was a death trap. But Captain Morrison was not finished with his lesson. As Kethvar prepared to leave with the evacuation, the human captain called out to him, "Director, you wanted to understand what makes humans dangerous. It is not our technology, though that is impressive. It is not our physical capabilities, though those serve us well. What makes us dangerous is that we never stop thinking about how to win." He gestured toward the chaos of the evacuation. "While your people were studying our ship, we were studying your station. We know your defensive capabilities, your evacuation procedures, your communication codes, and your military response protocols. We know the location of your home worlds and the routes your supply ships use." Kethvar stared at the human in horror. "You were gathering intelligence the entire time." "Every human you captured is a trained intelligence officer," Morrison confirmed. "Every conversation, every examination, every moment of apparent cooperation was part of a larger operation to learn everything we could about your species." The alien scientist realized the terrible truth. They had not captured humans for study. They had invited human spies into their most secure facility and given them unrestricted access to their technology and strategic information. Admiral Sullivan's fleet finished surrounding the research station just as the last Zephyrian evacuation ships departed. The human vessels formed a perfect sphere around the abandoned facility, their weapons trained on the structure that had housed their captured crew. "Fire!" Sullivan ordered. 27 human warships opened fire simultaneously. The research station, which had represented decades of Zephyrian scientific advancement, disappeared in a ball of superheated plasma. The destruction was so complete that no debris larger than a molecule remained, but the demonstration was not over. The human fleet turned toward the fleeing Zephyrian ships and began herding them toward the edge of the star system. It was a clear message. Humans could destroy their enemies or allow them to live, but the choice was entirely human to make. Commander Veltar sat in his evacuation ship, watching the human fleet through his sensors. Every vessel was a masterpiece of military engineering, designed by a species that had spent millennia perfecting the art of warfare. The Zephyrians had wanted to understand these beings, and now they did. "Send a message to the High Command," he ordered his communication officer. "Priority Alpha, maximum encryption." "What should the message say, Commander?" Veltar looked one last time at the human fleet, then at the empty space where their research station had been. "Tell them that we have encountered a species unlike any other in the galaxy. They are not conquerors seeking territory or resources. They are apex predators who have learned to build starships." He paused, choosing his words carefully for what might be the most important message in Zephyrian history. "Recommend immediate establishment of a neutral zone around all human territory. Recommend against any further contact with human vessels. and recommend that we never, ever, make the mistake of underestimating them again. The human fleet watched. The Zephyrian ships flee into deep space, then turned and began the journey home. Admiral Sullivan had accomplished her mission, the captured crew was safe, and every alien species within sensor range now understood exactly what happened to those who threatened humanity. Their